Hey, Arlene, it should be to the right of the moon. If you look in the sky and you see something that's very bright to the left of it,
Uh-huh.
that's Mars. So if you look to the right of it and you see another entity that's out there that's really bright, that's the combination of Jupiter and Saturn together. That's it.
Okay, because what I saw, it looked like it was a part of a reflection, like of a first quarter, not the first quarter of a moon, but it was more rounder, but it's super
I'm in this probably don't get for those people who are in the country. It's
If you down
time that it was
Randy, the paper is not able to get on either.
So what fixed mine was doing it on the laptop and not my phone.
Okay. Is Justin back yet? Is that what Justin went to do, to stream it to YouTube? Yes. Okay. As long as he's got it going on YouTube, then Randy's, that's where he's trying to get it. It's on YouTube now. Okay. We will call this meeting to order at 6:45 p.m. And at this time, we would like to welcome everybody. And, Brian, do you want to go ahead now, or do you want to go through?
Sure, I can. We just note for the record that this meeting is being held virtually through our Google Meet as a result of the provisions that are provided for in KYOAG 20-05 that was issued on March 18, 2020 in conjunction with the governor's emergency order. Given the current state of the COVID pandemic and our incident rate, it is not feasible to meet in a physical location. And therefore we are meeting virtually and we have met all the requirements necessary to comply with the OAG rule.
Okay. And at this time, we would like to do the moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America.
States of America.
to the republic
To the republic
for which it
for which
stands,
it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
I like the flag, Arlene. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
great. All right, at this time, we have items 1, 2, and 3, which is review of the agenda, adoption of the agenda and approve, or items 1 and 2, I'm sorry. And I would like to add on there to do we need to schedule the organizational meeting for the January.
And could I make a note also, just for clarity, item number 11, it came to us, I think, from item number 11 and number 12 is the pay applications from Codell. It's got the correct BG number and the correct amount, but number 11 lists the high school gymnasium, and that should actually be the field house, baseball fields. And item number 12 has the correct amount to go with that BG, but that lists the pay app for the field house, and that should actually be the gymnasium. Those two are reversed.
Okay,
The BG is correct and the amount is correct. It's just which facility it is needs to be reversed.
okay. So do you want to add item number 7A? The organizational meeting, would that work? Okay, if not, if there's not any more changes, then we need item number 2, adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt.
Motion by Mr. Pardo,
I'll second that.
second by Mr. Heisel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 3, approval of minutes for the November 16th, 2020 regular meeting. Any changes? Or are we good? Anybody like- All right, motion by Mr. Tawby,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Richardson. All of those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, student and staff recognition. Mr. Christie?
Unmute.
Thank you, Arlene.
Now, sorry about that. Is that better? Helps when you unmute. I want to recognize our technology
Yeah.
department. We have 9 members in our technology department, starting with Justin Kaysen, who is our technology coordinator, Joel Johnson, a network specialist, Linda Horton, who's administrative assistant, Alex Neal is a technician, technology trainer, David Parcell, a technician, technology trainer, Beth Smith, a technician, technology trainer, Carrie Elliott, a technology resource teacher, Lindsay Hale, a technology resource teacher, and Chris McClellan is a technology resource teacher. These guys have assisted us so much in this time in the last 11 months. And they've assisted not only us at the district, but the families that have called in with technology issues and internet challenges. They've been to homes, they've helped work with the hotspots, they've been placed in the community and in community areas or in homes. There's a lot of homes that wouldn't be able to connect in any other way to ensure that students succeed. They've worked with and trained our staff and our students on a new technology platform that some were familiar with, but none were familiar with to the level that we are now. And we couldn't have made it through this without this group of people. And they have made it possible to, by working around the clock with this technology deal for nearly 1,000 employees and nearly 5,200 students to have technology accessibility. And that's all been over the last 10 months. And those 9 workers and 1 clerical assistant has done this on their own. So I wanted to give a big thank you to that group and recognize them for all the work that they've done. In addition, with those people, our counselors at all the schools and our family resource staff have worked closely with these folks too in helping to identify places to put these hotspots and helping to identify families that needed the help. So a huge thank you to that technology group and all of our counselors in the district. So thank you.
Yes, and Justin, I really, really want to thank you because you answer your phone day and night every time I reach out to you, all kinds of issues going on. So I personally, you have been awesome to me. So I just want to give you a special shout out there on my end because you have really helped me through this year as board chair and everything that's had to go virtual and everything else. All right, Paul, do you want me to go next?
Yes.
Okay. Apparently my dog's going to start talking, so I apologize. I guess now would be the appropriate time to acknowledge our 2 outgoing board members that will be leaving us tonight. We'll start with the elder of the 2, since he likes to refer to me as the elder. 6 years ago, when I heard there was another Peardo joining the board, I knew it was going to be eventful, and Gordon has yet to disappoint me. In his educational background, administration background has been a necessity over the past 6 years. He has been a help to not only myself, but all the others that have had the privilege to serve alongside him. Besides all of this, he has provided us all with so many laughs, some at our expense and a lot at his own expense. As I wish I had known his shoe size, because instead of a plaque, I think I would have rather bought him a new pair of running shoes. I think that would have been a much better choice, given his last joke that he liked to give us. Gordy, you have helped me through some of the hardest times being on the board, and your leadership as board chair the previous year was a great one. I have no idea where you intend to go from here, but wherever it is, I know that they will be blessed and entertained. And I hope they have a McDonald's with chicken nuggets close by.
Thank you.
Oh, Scott. Oh, yeah, that's your plaque, Gordy.
Yeah, I've got the plaque, Mr. Peridot and Mr. Heisel. I have these for you. We'll make arrangements here later in the evening. I'll get those. I'll deliver them to your door, or you can pick them up at central office, whichever works better for each of you.
All right, Scott, I know you can't wait. I know you're so excited. 4 years ago, when Scott joined the board, I don't think any of us were prepared for what we were going to get. I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked, what is the deal with Scott? And my answer has been the same for 4 years. Scott. That's always the same. It's always going to be the same. I'm going to miss Scott because he has pushed me, not just my buttons, but he has pushed me to always be better. A fine example of that is when I was nominated for the chair, Scott was not going to let me get that easily, so much so that he nominated everybody else. He nominated everybody else at the table, including himself. Before he would let me get it easily. And it will probably go down in history, Scott, just so you know. Since then, he has told me more than once, most recently, 5 minutes ago, we started this meeting, what a good job I've been as board chair this year, and I so appreciate that. But he's always been very encouraging since then on as far as my run as board chair. But what really comes to mind with Scott is we had a board meeting, and during that board meeting, Scott and I had a knockdown drag out, and it was a rough one. A few days later, my grandfather passed away. And very few people know this, but one of the first ones to walk through the door at the visitation was Scott. He would make sure that gave his condolences, and to not only me, but my entire family. And that was one of the things that, that said enough to me about Scott, that he could drive me crazy at the board meetings, but that showed what type of person he was on the other side. So that was more than I ever needed to know about Scott, was just that he was there when myself and my family needed it. So I will miss the fussing back and forth with Scott and him pushing me, because I always need that extra push from Scott, and him pushing me so I can prove him wrong. I don't, just like with Gordy, I don't know what your plans are from here, but I wish you nothing but the best. And I really, really wish both of your wives a lot of patience, and I wish them nothing but the best, because they sure are going to have a lot of time with you all, because they won't be putting up with you, or they will be putting up with you all a whole lot more, since you won't be having to come to all these meetings and spending all these evenings with us. And I would like to thank you both for all the service that you all have done over the past few years, and everything that you all have helped accomplish. You all have been more appreciated than you will ever know. So we just wanted to tell you all thank you.
I'd like to say thank you to both of you too. It's been a fast 5 years that you guys have been around, but there's been a lot of changes, and I think a lot of changes have came to pass that probably wouldn't have if you all hadn't been here. And been some differences at times. Sometimes some tough patches, but I think those differences have really just challenges to grow, and I think that's what we've done as a group and as a board over the last 5 years for Gordy and 3 years for Scott. I've appreciated getting to work with you, and I'm sure we'll be having some conversations in the past. Gordy, that still holds true when we get that athletic complex completely finished. We need to set a time to go to the top of the high school and turn on all the facility lights and kind of look at the accomplishments. So hopefully that's going to happen. Hopefully that'll happen before March. We'll still be donning the masks, I guess, when we do that, but hopefully we'll get to do that before March, since our first softball game starts up in sometime in early March. So looks like we're about to finish up, and you guys have been around and seen a lot of changes. And I think the vast majority of those changes have been for the good in the last few years. So thank you for your help and your work.
Well, I had a 15-minute speech that I wrote, but since we started 15 minutes late, I can't give it, and for the sake of time. But I appreciate working with everybody, and you all having patience with me, and it's certainly been fun to accomplish so much. And again, thank you all so much for everything you all done too.
All right. Do we have anybody that is signed up to do public comment?
We do not. Mr. Stump is at central office at the front to sign in anybody who wishes to speak, and there's nobody has been in.
Okay. All right, then we are moving on to item number 4. Consider acknowledgement of the 2019-2020 financial audit report. Ms. Ellis.
Mr. Tom Sparks is on here as well to give his summary of the audit and answer any questions that you all may have. Mr. Sparks, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank the board for allowing my firm to do your audit this year. I want to thank Mr. Christie and Alicia for their excellent help and their staff. When our crew was on site, it was very efficient the way they had the materials laid out for us, and we really appreciated their efforts. This audit this year will be a little different, as will your next year's audit, due to the effects of the pandemic. So it's kind of hard to match apples to apples in some of the numbers that I will be presenting to you. But there again, that's part of 2020. I will let you know that KDE has pushed back to January the 15th of 2021 for the final submission of your audit. They're waiting for the OMB to issue their addendum for the compliance. I just got a email from the AICPA. They're anticipating that's going to happen this week. Our assessment is it should not change any financial statement numbers. It may require some audit procedures related to any of the COVID monies, COVID-19 monies you received this year, which those are listed on your schedule of federal awards, which is in your audit. But there again, we'll find out more this week when that addendum finally gets issued. That being said, I will hit the highlights of the audit, and please stop me if you have any questions on any item. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is page 1 of the audit. There again, I'm going off the actual page numbers. If you're looking at a PDF, we'll be on different pages, but page 1 of the audit, down at the bottom of the page is the auditor's opinion. We issued an unmodified opinion, which is a clean report. Means we did not find any evidences of fraud or misappropriation or misstatement of any of the numbers inside the financial statements of the district. On page 2 of the audit, in the bottom of the page, you'll see a new paragraph called emphasis of matter. We discussed last year that there would be a new GASB coming about relating to your financial activities, which is basically the school activity funds. That was implemented this year, and when that happened, we had to reflect a change in your financial statements. We have a footnote number 18 that goes in the detail of it, and you'll see it listed as a prior period adjustment, which basically just moves the balances of the school activity funds from how they were presented to the actual front of your financial statements. The next set of the audit is what's called the management discussion and analysis. It's pages 3 through 8. Mr. Christie and Alicia did a great job of pulling this together. The information that the auditors have to present is more on the financial statement side of things, not any of the highlights per se. So if you go to page 4, this is information that's put in the MD&A that comes from the audited financial statements. Page 4 reflects information that's actually on page 9 of your audit, but in this format, it's a nice comparative of this year to last year and shows you the change. You'll see that your total assets decreased about $4.7 million. This was primary cash used from the construction fund on the 2 major projects you've had going on this year, which was the athletic complex and the field house. So those are ongoing as of June 30th, 2020. The section called deferred outflows of resources and deferred inflows of resources. As we've stated in the past, this information comes directly from the state's actuary. The state hires an actuary to do analysis of the pension plan for the CERS, which is your classified employees, and KTRS, which is your teachers. So last year, Clark County's deferred outflows increased $1.8 million, and that's based upon the actuary. Under the current, on total liabilities decreased $4.2 million. This was primarily a reduction in your long-term bonds. You continue to repay your bonds, and actually your OPEB liability went down this past year, which is good news. The deferred inflows, again, this comes from the state's actuary, which that actuary report is online on the state's pension retirement system website. And it went up $2.2 million. The overall effect with your net position was a negative $935,000, and this was before the prior period adjustment of putting the school activity funds on your financials, which we'll see on page 9. On page 5 of the audit is another snapshot of your governmental and business type, and the business type is actually your school lunch program, food service program, and it's there again in a comparative form. So you can see right off the bat under total revenues went from 56 million down from 70 million, and it's directly related to the state revenue sources. It was down $15 million from the prior year. Under the expenses also went down from 57 million, was 69 million down to 57 million. And there again, you can see the impact of the state funds that did not come in, as it reflects primarily in the areas of your benefits and wages through your on behalf payments. So for the year, the governmental funds had a loss of or deficit of $916,000. Under the business type, which is your school activity funds, as expected, you can look at your local revenue, which is from your students and your teachers. It was down because you didn't have as many students on site eating. The state revenues actually went up. The federal monies went down, and that's because it reimburses you on the amount of meals served. And when the meals served goes down, then your federal reimbursement will go down. Down under the food service, the expenses actually did go up this year, almost $24,000. That's primarily related to the impact on the pension plan and the OPEB expenses that were allocated to the school lunch program. So for the year, after transfers, your school lunch program had a deficit of $305,000. And you can see at the bottom, that prior period adjustment, that $286,000, which is over in the 2020 governmental plan. That is where the school activity funds came onto the front of the financial statements instead of being in the back as a supplemental schedule, as in past years. The next thing I'd like to bring to your attention actually starts with and I'm going to skip over some items in the audit because they're being reflected up here in the front. But if you'll go to page 6, and you see the general fund. And on page 7 is last year's general fund information, for comparative purposes. But for your general fund, revenues went up about $611,000. That was primarily related to tax revenues. Your special revenue funds actually went down about $390,000. This is primarily from federal grants, were less this year than prior year. And we've already talked about the food service. Down under the expenditures this year compared to last year actually went up $2 million. And this was primarily in the area of student services and plant operations. On the special revenue side of things, your expenses went down about $293,000, and this was primarily an instructional staff expense line item. And food service we've already talked about. So if you go down to the bottom under the excess and deficit between the years, this year, and this is before transfers, because you'll have some transfers between general fund and the other funds on some of this deficit. But before transfers, the general fund had a deficit of 2.3 million as compared to 942 in the prior year. Special revenue had a deficit of 96,000 as compared to a surplus last year of $466. And then food service had a deficit of $255,000. Again, this is before the transfers, which will be reflected. Let's see. Get over to that page. If you go to page 13 of the audit, on page 13, you have your various funds, but you look at the bottom, you'll see that there's transfers that go between the general fund and the other funds. So that, let's say the deficit and surplus I was talking about is before those transfers. On page 18, and we kind of discussed this in summary form, but on page 18 is more detail on the food service fund. And there again, it points out the activity which Becky is well aware of, the impact of not having students on site and eating meals and the reimbursement process. But most districts we did this year did have operating deficits in their food service fund. The next part of the audit is the notes to the financial statements. It starts on page 20 and goes to page 61. If you'll turn to page 31 and 32, I do want to bring to your attention, and this is going to be coming up, GASB always wants to make changes in how governmental entities have to reflect various items. And on page 31 and page 32, there's some upcoming GASB items that will impact Clark County. The first one deals with leases. And what this standard is going to do, it's now going to make districts that have long-term leases will have to reflect those as an intangible asset on their financial statements, as well as put a liability on their financial statements as an offset. It should wash out from year to year, but there is some present value application that has to be imputed when this first goes on the books. We've helped one district do this. They early implemented, which you could. I would have waited, but they wanted to go ahead and implement it. So I am available to help Alicia if she needs any help with getting that implemented. The other one that I think will have an impact and it will vary is at the bottom of page 31, and that's subscription-based information technology arrangements. There again, this is another GASB that's set up it's designed to put an intangible asset on the financial statements if you have long-term subscription-based assets. And there again, you have an offsetting liability. They should wash out as far as the impact, but it is required to be on your financials. Page 33, I just want to reflect this up under the construction in progress. You can see this past year, an increase in your construction progress of $12,600,000. The biggest impact here, or the biggest projects, was the GRC Athletic Complex and the Field House project. Page 33, page 35 to 37 deals with your long-term debt. There were no new bonds this year, and there were no new KISTA agreements this year. So at the end of the year, on page 37, kind of gives a nice snapshot. You had outstanding bonds of $83 million as of June 30 of 20. And on your capital lease side, you had which is your KISTA payments, outstanding balance of $1,078,000. The next column over shows what's going to be due and need to be budgeted for in your current year, fiscal year 21. 3.9 for the bonds and about 152,000 for the KISTA agreement. Several years ago, all governmental entities had to implement a couple of GASB statements, 68 and 75, which dealt with retirement plans and OPEB arrangements. And these are voluminous. Most of this information comes directly out of either the state auditor's report or the state actuary's report. And we're required to put in the proportionate share based upon their information in your financial statements. Just want to bring to your attention page 41. Based upon the actuary information, they have that Clark County's CERS liability was $18,862,000. This compares to $15,700,000 last year, so it's up about $3 million. On page 50 is the OPEB arrangement for your CERS. And if you'll go to that page in the middle, let's see. In the middle of the page, the district's OPEB liability was $4.5 million. Last year was 4.6, so that did go down about $94,000 over the prior year. On the teacher side of things for OPEB, it's on page 55. And, page 52, I apologize, page 52. Up at the top on the KTRS side, the district's portion of the liability, OPEB liability, was $11,300,000. There again, that compares to $12,600,000 prior year. So your OPEB liability for your CRS and KTRS actually went down this past year, according to the actuary's reports. We discussed earlier about the impact of the school activity funds. It's note number 18, which should be on page 60 and 61 of the audit. So the impact of the GASB for fiduciary activities, which your school activity funds is classified as a fiduciary activity. This is the impact. It was moving $286,000, which was the fund balance of their account, from a fiduciary standpoint to a school activity fund, which is now, I think it's Fund 25 in the Munis setup. And I think we did one big entry to get everything over, or Alicia did. And then there's some districts that are actually putting this in Munis. Some are continuing using the software for their schools and then just putting it over 1 year. KDE will have to determine how they want to apply that. But they did allow this method for this year. Of course, we have to put something in there about the COVID. So note number 19 just expresses that There is going to be uncertainty. Who knows what's going to happen? I heard today that Congress has finally maybe issued some new relief, and who knows the impact, what that may have on local governments and school districts. The next part of the audit is requires supplemental information. It's on 62 to 70. These statements come directly from the actuary. You will eventually have to have 10 years worth of activity presented. There's only 5 years available at this point in time, 6. And so as the actuary continues to present their report each and every year, then this schedule will be updated. Page 71 through 79 is supplemental information. And this is composed of 3 different items. One, on page 71, 72, are what's classified as non-major funds. The non-major funds are like your capital outlay, your building fund, your debt service, district activity, and there's the student activity funds are presented as this combining statement. On page 72 is the activity, revenue, and expenses for the year for those funds. Page 73 and 75, the auditor's contract this year did require, even though the school activity funds under the new GASB were required to be put on the face of the financials, they still wanted the detail presented in this format. So on page 73 shows you each of the schools and their balances as of June 30 of 2020. Also, the auditor's contract required that the high school be reflected by activity in detail. So on page 74 through 75 is all the high school activity. One of the things we're required to look for is to make sure that there's not a deficit balance in any of the accounts, which there were not this year. Page 76 through 79, this is the total amount of federal funds that was expended in Clark County this year. I just want to bring your attention that you did have some COVID monies listed on page 77. You'll see it's called ESSER funds, COVID-19, $30,000. If this new addendum that's supposed to get released this week requires any special testing, we may have to come back and do some special testing on this $30,000. We think there will be a threshold applied, and I would hope 30,000 would be below that threshold. Page 80 and 81, we're required to test compliance with the governmental auditing standards. In our auditor's contract is a large listing of laws and regulations that we must test that the district is in compliance with. I'm happy to say that this year we had no findings. We had a couple last year. Those have been corrected. And this year, everything that the district was supposed to do on the compliance side was corrected, and there was no findings. Page 82 and 83, we're also required to test federal compliance with your major programs. We did the compliance testing, and we did not have any compliance findings on we tested special education cluster and improving teacher quality program, and we had no findings with either one of those federal programs. Page 90 is, it starts on page 87, but it goes through. So on page 88, we did have one Red Book finding at George Rogers Clark. It had to do with transfer form not being completed or signed off on. But on the other schools, we didn't have anything material to report. On page 88 and 90, were prior year. You can see there were several items that we found in the prior year. Happy to say none of these were repeat findings for this year. So that's always a positive sign when your district can not have repeat findings. KDE does not like repeat findings. I know I went through that pretty fast, a lot of pages, but I tried to hit the highlights. Is there any question on any item or any information that I presented?
On the school activities fund on page 88, where it says regarding the high school, that you noted many forms, many, what's the definition of many?
Let me see. If you'll hold on, let me pop over here.
And in your opinion, is this a minor blip, or is this something that, has this been addressed, Mr. Christie, at the high school?
Yes, and I was just getting ready to text Alicia. I think part of this was we changed bookkeepers, and we had to go back and when this came up, we actually did some red book training with the principal and the bookkeeper there to correct the problem, and I think it's correct now.
Yes, and I just want to note on the mini forms, it was the date that was missing, which that is part of what the auditors do. They have to make sure all the boxes and places are filled in. That's one of their compliance pieces they're looking at. But as far as the approval of the form, I mean, the sponsor and the principal signed the documents. It's just missing the date. And so that's just, the note has been made to the new secretary. Just make sure every line that is on a form is filled out, because that is part of the compliance the auditors have to look for from KDE's perspective. So that is the comment, is the forms, the date was missing.
The date was correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alicia.
Uh-huh.
And Mr. Sparks, I don't know if this is a big deal or not, but you mentioned note 19, and I don't see note 19 in this document, unless I'm just looking.
Well, let's see. Okay. Let me apologize. I will send over, I'm not sure if that was a note that got added upon the second partner review. I may have inadvertently left that out. I will send that over. It's at the, let me get back over here.
Sounded like it wasn't a huge deal, but you mentioned it.
Yes, and let me get back up here to that page. I'm sorry, I'd gone to the back of the audit. So it's right below the note number 18 on page 61 of the audit. But it basically just went into saying that the World Health Organization declared the pandemic and that it continues to spread across the globe, impacting worldwide economic activity. And at this point, we don't know the impact that will continue to have. It's kind of just a blanket note about the COVID-19. And we just don't know what the impacts it may have on funding that the states may send down to the districts. So there's just a lot of uncertainty. So that's all it really says. But I apologize. I guess this didn't get put in after the second partner review. I will email this one page over to Alicia and Mr. Christie and make sure that gets to you all. Like I say, this has not been formally submitted to KDE yet, but that must have been a change that happened after we bound that. I guess it got done before the second partner review got done.
Okay, thank you.
And I exchanged an email earlier today about 2 spelling errors, and I know my friend Mrs. Hicks would be mad if I don't make sure to remind you all to get those corrected.
Yes, I actually have sent those pages over to Alicia today, and the final copy that will go into KDE has been corrected. We had activities had been misspelled in one place, and unrestricted was misspelled. There again, you rely on spell check, I guess a little too much, but those were both in Excel documents, and I guess it didn't catch it. But anyway, that has been corrected. And but I sent those 2 pages over to Alicia, or
Yes, I got them right before the meeting, so I haven't gotten them sent out to everybody yet.
okay. Yeah, and I apologize for that oversight. Any other questions? Mr. Heisel did have some comments, and it was good. I'm glad a lot of districts or board won't read the auditor's opinion, but GASB implemented a change with their 2018 Yellow Book that changed some wording that had to be put in there. There again, I'm not sure and they'll continue to change and modify the reports, but we did get that implemented this year. Any other questions?
I guess I just have a comment. Appreciate your work, Mr. Sparks, and of course, the fine work that Alicia, Mrs. Ellis has done and her staff. It's especially during this, we have to use the word over and over again, this terribly challenging year. It's amazing they got all this done with all the changes going on, and I commend Mrs. Ellis and her staff for the fine work they've done.
Yeah, I agree. At this point, there's only 2 final things that need to be done to get this year's audit completely wrapped up. We must submit, and we couldn't really do until the OMB gets this addendum done, but the data collection report will have to be filed with the federal government, and then KDE will have to have the final audit submitted to them by January the 15th. So they gave additional time to wait to see what the federal government was going to do with the this addendum. So that's the only 2 things I know that's left to do for this audit to be completely completed.
So I have a question on the process. Do you, Mr. Sparks, do you submit that, or do Ms. Ellis submit that?
So on the applicant, what gets submitted to KDE will get the inner auditor's contract. We're required to send an electronic copy and a bound copy to KDE by January the 15th. The data collection report is a joint effort between Alicia and us. We have to put the information I presented about the schedule of federal awards, all those expenditures. We have to start the process. It gets sent over to Alicia, who looks at it, approves it. It comes back to us for final submission. That is very important, because if the feds don't get that, it impacts the funding to the districts in future years. And they do monitor that. Now they've given some leeway on the due date due to this issue with the addendum, which we still haven't gotten. We were supposed to get it in September, but federal government has pushed it back and pushed it back. So hopefully we'll get it this week, but that's the process.
Okay, thank you.
And just in addition, on your board reports, the ones that are labeled the Munis AFR and the Munis balance sheet, I have to do a submittal to KDE through a web applications thing and submit those Munis reports that they then match on their end to the audit that the auditors send in. So they have a process of matching to make sure we are in agreement between our systems as well.
Oh, okay.
We have had several districts go ahead and do that, Alicia, just to get that out of the way, because the addendum won't impact any financial statement item, but they just want to make sure that it's gone through. So
And I did submit that last week on our end.
Okay.
The Munis side of stuff. So
Okay.
that is done from our end.
Well, again, I appreciate your opportunity to present the audit tonight. Appreciate your time and the effort you all have done. These Zoom or Google meetings are somewhat hard to get used to, but it may be the wave of the future until the pandemic gets under control at some point.
Thank you so much.
a vote, we just have to, it's consider acknowledgement. So, is that all you need from us, is just to acknowledge it?
Yes, I'm required to present the audit to the board, and then the board takes the actions they required for acceptance.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
So just to make sure, Mr. Thomas,
Yes,
there's no action that we have to take. It says consider acknowledgement, so we don't have to do a motion to say we've acknowledged it and approved it. Is that correct?
I would think there'll be a note reflected in the minutes that Ms. Nance will put in there that'll say that it was presented and acknowledged by the chair.
Great, thank you.
All right, then we will move on to item number 5. Review and acknowledge the Clark County Schools utility savings update presented by Performance Services. David Nichols.
Hey, good evening. This is David. We have David Dow and also Mike Lindsay with us tonight from Performance Services. I think there's also a presentation that Justin has, so I will turn this presentation over to Mr. Dow and Mr. Lindsay at this time.
Hey, Mike, I believe you were going to drive the presentation. So good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Dowdell. I'm Business Development Manager with Performance Services based here in Kentucky. And thank you for allowing us some time to present the first year savings report for the Clark County Schools Energy Project.
Thanks, David. Can everybody hear me okay? My name is Mike Lindsay. I can't get my camera on, so I apologize for that. Don't know if I can share our presentation. Or do you guys see our presentation in your packet, hopefully?
Yes, it's in our packet. I see it. Unless something has changed.
Nope, should be the same thing. It should be dated December 21st, 2020.
Hey, Mike, did you want me to see if I could pop it up on the
Yes,
screen?
if you can. I don't know. We've had this before. Just in case there's people watching or online that don't have the presentation, it'd be good if we could show that to you. There we go. Thank you. So, and yeah, and as I said, my name is Mike Lindsay. I appreciate David for the introduction. And my job is with Performance Services. I lead the Performance Assurance Group. And so I have a team that monitors all of the projects, both as far as energy performance as well as system performance for our projects. And so we're here tonight to kind of review where we are energy savings wise on a couple of projects that we've completed for Clark County Schools. David, if you want to go ahead and switch to the next slide. Our annual reporting follows the calendar year. So our 2019 annual report was sent to the district back in March. Our next annual report will be covering 2020. We'll be prepared again about February, March time. But for 2019, the combined 2 projects, the actual savings was $45,000 greater than the guaranteed amount, or 23%. I'll get more into those details here in a moment. The 2 projects, we completed a project at Campbell Junior High, and then followed that up with a second project that we call our 2017 project at 5 other facilities. As you look at the data, we're going to present the base year or the full year prior to the project at Campbell was 2013, and then the base year or the utility data prior to the 2017 project was for October 2014 through September 2015. All of those projects include some significant HVAC improvements. We had some LED lighting, some high efficiency boilers. There was some water conservation, some building envelope work completed as well. So just a reminder of that project. David, you want to go to the next slide? As I said, the combined guarantee for those 2 projects, we exceeded that by 23%. The annual guaranteed amount is $198,242. The actual savings in 2019 was over $243,000. And David, you want to go to the next slide? We'll drill down into that detail a little bit further. For the Campbell project, The total savings in 2019 was just over $90,000. Our guarantee is just under 80,000, so we're about 13% over that. The actual energy reduction was pretty significant, so it was almost 809,000 kilowatt hours of electricity at that building, and almost 32,000 therms of natural gas. And again, we anticipate the savings being greater in 2020. David, if you want to go to the next slide. This is just a look at Campbell Junior High, the electric use. And again, you were at about 2.3 million kilowatt hours in that base year of 2013. In 2019, your actual use was just over 1.5 million kilowatt hours. And that's like a 35% reduction in actual electrical use at that building. Year to date, which is the data we had when we put this report together for 2020, was January through September. And you were at about 869,000 kilowatt hours. So you can see a significant reduction, part of that obviously due to the pandemic. But we tend to see things trend downward annually as your team gets more comfortable with the systems. When you have more updated systems, you can be more aggressive in terms of how you control those and make sure you're providing a great environment for students when they're there, and you're saving energy when students aren't in the building. And the reason for that September date is the utility bills typically track 6 to 8 weeks after the completion of that last month. And so we have a portion of October bills in, but not a complete month. So that's 3/4 of the year. You're trending significantly downward for 2020. David, you can go to the next slide. For the 2017 project, which again includes work at 5 different buildings, and you've got some significant energy reduction throughout, and I'll get to that in a moment. But your total savings in 2019 was $153,355. That's almost 30% greater than the guaranteed amount of just over $118,000. And David, you go to the next slide. So those 5 buildings combined, again, the base year was October 14 through September 15, which was the last full year prior to putting together the project that we completed in 2017. Your usage in those 5 buildings was almost 4.2 million kilowatt hours. In 2019, it was about 3.2 million kilowatt hours. So again, some really significant savings. And then in 2020, obviously 3/4 of the way through the year, you're seeing a significant reduction further. But again, that was about a 24% reduction in those 5 buildings combined from the electrical side, which is just a great overall performance. David, if you want to go to the next slide. And so that's looking at engineering calculations on value of the project, the actual utility data, savings in the project. And this next slide I want to share with you is a little bit different spin on the data, but looking at what we like to call our cost avoidance slide. So in the 2017 project, this is looking at those 5 buildings. In that base year of 2014, you spent $459,364 in energy costs. And since that time, we've seen an average annual increase in energy costs of 5.7%. We've seen this nationally in our company as we work in 11 different states, but we've really seen significant rate increases in Kentucky, partly because you started with really low rates years ago, and we're still one of the lower in the country, but also somewhat a lot of the Midwest, your usage of coal for power generation has just become more and more expensive to generate power utilizing coal. So as you've seen that 5.7%, we'd like to look at this to say, had you not done anything and things had just stayed the same, apply that 5.7% to that base year use. In 2019, you would have spent a little over $606,000 on that same amount of energy. And then David, if you want to go to the next slide, this will show the actual usage in 18 and 19, which your cost was $425,000 in 18 and almost $39,000 in 19. So as opposed to spending $606, had you not done the project, that 2017 project, you actually spent $439,000 in energy costs in those 5 buildings. Again, that's a significant. And as we mentioned earlier, the measured and verified savings to the engineering calcs and how we measure the savings, we were at about $90,000. So to give you some perspective on just the overall benefit of that project, had energy usage stayed the same and just applied that energy rate increases over the years. And then, David, go to the next slide. Another thing we wanted to mention was as you do projects like this, there's significantly additional benefits, not just the energy savings. And we talk about optimal learning environment for students. So when we do all of our projects, we start with an end in mind of what's the ideal temperature, humidity, CO2, light levels, ventilation, and so forth for learning environments. So in this project, some of those energy savings could have been greater had you compromised those things, but we actually took a loss by optimizing your ventilation in those systems to make sure you had appropriate level of ventilation in all of your classrooms. And there's additional savings in addition to the learning environment of just reliability and longevity of your systems because you have new systems. Those operational savings will benefit you for years as you have new systems that are operating optimally and so forth. So, I'm going to add that piece to that, not just energy savings to an updated system, but reliability, longevity, and a better learning environment. And David, if you want to go to that last slide. And so just want to wrap this up, but just let you know that our annual energy savings report for 2020 will be ready in probably March of 2021 once we get all the data in for 2020. One thing I wanted to mention that I hadn't already is I have a team that's reviewing all the buildings we work in. So we do a monthly review of all of your utility bills. And so I get a weekly report from my team of any building in our portfolio that we've worked in where the utility data for that month seems to be offline compared to the previous month, the previous year, and the base year. And the irony part of that is interesting this year. And I don't really give them a guidelines as to what to look for other than just abnormalities. And so one of the reports we got during this last year was your George Rogers Clark High School, because you're doing significant additions there. And we've not done any work at that building, but we're trending the utility data in all of your buildings. And so that was red flag to me of, something's going on in that building because your usage was trending up. And, David and I knew, but we verified with David Nichols there that was one of the buildings where you were doing additional work. So your usage should be trending up. But that's just one of the things that we do that makes sure that you're receiving the benefit in terms of energy savings of your projects. The next thing we would like to do, if we ever return, or when we do return to normal, I should say, is Energy Star scoring and certification of any buildings that would qualify for that. And I'm pretty optimistic that a number of your buildings would qualify for Energy Star. I think you've had them qualified before. And to do that, we have to have utility data with the buildings being occupied, and then we have to verify the learning environment, which I mentioned earlier was the temperature, humidity, ventilation, and so forth, with them being occupied. And of course, right now we can't do that. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is, there's additional savings opportunities available that we've identified. Some of that's including solar opportunities, and with the anticipation of utility rates to continue to increase significantly over the next 5 years in Kentucky and really throughout the country. I think it's another opportunity to look at, hedging against those rate increases. So I know I've gone through that fairly quickly, but if you have any questions for myself or David or either David, I'd like to answer those for you right now.
We have a question on your item 4 there on the last slide. Appreciate you all putting this together. Thank you all. Has there been a proposal submitted to the district regarding any solar projects?
Yes, we talked with Mr. Christie. I believe it was back in January of this year. There was some discussions about some solar being a good potential. I believe it was at Shear, where I'm trying to think if that was on an all-electric rate where there was a really good payback for considering solar there. So we gave Mr. Christie some budget numbers at the time, and I think you were working on your district facility planning as well. So we had some other ideas that I believe may have gotten incorporated into the updated district facility plan.
Yeah, we had talked in this original project at the very beginning. There was solar was presented to go with solar, a project at Shear, and it was one of the things at the very beginning of the project, or right at the end before it was approved, was one of the last things that got taken out. So that's the goal. Shear is a great place, I think, to look at the solar and do it in a way that we produce enough solar energy to do what we need there without going overboard and trying to put it in on the grid, because KU won't buy it back from us. So we don't want to overproduce, so we can scale it that way. I think solar is something we want to look at in any new constructions that we do. I think that's the next big step for us. Of course, the things that we've done, getting controls, in all these buildings, control of all these facilities has been monumental in the saving and being able to control that. We're not heating and air conditioning at all hours of the day and night. When it's not occupied, we can go back into setback modes. We can control that. Where we used to go in, turn the boiler on or turn the boiler off. That was all the controls we had. Now we can set that back. We can have it come up to temperature before students come in. I might add also that through the COVID thing, one of the things that we've been able to, that's been good for us and will be as we start to bring kids back into the buildings, is 100% fresh air in the buildings. Not a lot of places can do that, and that's has proven to be a huge factor in the COVID times. So that's something else that we've got in our advantage right now. Allergies, things like that with teachers, where we were having problems with people being in the buildings. Now that we've got the fresh air, we got control of these systems and can do that. We have very limited problems of those sorts now coming from staff and faculty and students working in the buildings, where we used to have to deal with that on a regular basis. And this has been huge in doing that. So I hope that as we move forward, we can continue to work with contracting. They've been great. And like I said, they're already, like he said, they're monitoring all of our buildings already anyway. And even though they've not done work in some of our buildings, we get calls, David gets calls all the time about what's going on in these buildings. So they're monitoring. It's a good group. And I'm hopeful that in the future that we've got other projects that we can look forward to in some of our existing buildings and maybe even in some of the newer buildings as we come online, do some of the same kinds of technology. But we still got a lot that we could do in the district that can generate even more savings.
I had a question for Mr. Christie, perhaps staff. There were some older base years that was used for these projects. I just wanted to verify that there were no other energy saving items done between base years and when this work went online that would have contributed to it. I'm fairly certain of one. I just wanted to ask the question just to verify that.
No, and those base years were done right up to they were done at the times that right up as late as they could possibly be done before we started these projects. So there wasn't a lot of time lapse from the time that the baseline was done until the project was started. Now, from the baseline until the project was completed, there was a couple of years in there, but the actual start of the project, and they used, the baseline was established on just the bills that we had received that year. So there was no being able to do anything with those, and there was nothing else done other than just maintenance on any of the current equipment that we might have had in those facilities during that time. No new equipment was installed other than what we've done with performance contracting.
Okay. And in case any of the other board members need some nighttime reading, they sent me a 44-page detail of all these calculations, which I'd be, of course, happy to share with everybody else if you get bored during the holidays. But I went through the best I could, and they've done a very thorough job of analyzing this, and I'm glad it all worked out for the district.
Thank you, Mr. Heisel. I was going to say, yes, this is just an overview of the full report, and it's much more in depth, a lot of numbers, a lot of charts. And, we can get you a copy of that if you haven't seen one already. Any other questions?
Mr. Christie, I think we're going to have to classify this as a win for Clark County.
I would agree. I would agree with that.
It's been a great project, and as Mr. Christie said, who'd have known that with the emphasis on indoor air quality nowadays, that chilled beam system, I mean, that was really the way to go. And I told Mr. Christie I'd like to work on a case study just to kind of highlight not only the energy and comfort benefits of those systems, but the indoor air quality aspects with everything going on nowadays. So be a really good piece.
It was interesting on my dog just, my wife coming in, sorry about that. Facebook, there's a group called Teachers in the Know or something to that effect. It's all teachers, and there was some comments being made about buildings and air quality during these COVID times, and I was very proud when when one of our teachers stepped up in this conversation and said, that's not something that we have to worry about in Clark County because we have 100% fresh air in our buildings. And so the teachers have recognized it and the staff in those buildings have recognized it too. So it's definitely a win for the whole district.
Well, thank you again for giving us the time to present the first year savings report. We will be back sometime in early spring, hopefully next year, and can present year two to you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yes, great. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Okay, that one was a review and acknowledge as well. So we will move on to item number 6. Consider approval of change order number 2-13 to Rising Sun Development for the George Rogers Clark High School Fieldhouse and Athletic Project BG 18-334 in the amount of $11,012.98. Paul.
I can take it, or Mr. Stump can if he's on, if he'd like to take it, if he's on.
I'm on, but I'm happy for you to explain to them what that's for, Paul, if you like.
It does. It's at the baseball field, down the left field line, outside the bullpen area. Is an area where the batter's cage for the field would be stored. It's an assembled net assembly that folds down, but it comes down to about 20 feet long when it's even folded down. It has to be moved off the playing area. It can't be outside the foul line. It's got to be outside the fenced in area in the event of a game. And right now there's gates, everything's there. Where it is, there's a place it can come out. It would be tight coming out, but the problem is it was an oversight. And after we've done it, we've looked at, there needs to be a concrete pad there where that rolls outside of that fenced in area. It rolls out into a gravel area, which in time, I think the wheels of this will cut into the rock. It'll be tracking dirt, rock, maybe even mud in onto the field each time that they use it in between games. So this proposal is to pour a 25 by 25 foot concrete pad just outside those gates, so as they roll that outside the playing area, it has a concrete pad area to sit on. And this is through Rising Sun. And you see on the back of this, you see the cost estimate on that, 11,000 something.
Any questions, comments? Not, but I'd like to make a motion.
It is your recommendation, Mr. Christie, to do this?
Yes, it is.
You did not previously approve this?
No, sir, I didn't. I waited. I did not. We were close enough that it wasn't, I mean, we can get this poured here pretty quickly.
I move to approve as written.
Okay, motion by Mr. Peridot,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Talby. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, item number 7. Acknowledge receipt of the approval of new district facility plan for the Clark County Schools from KDE. Paul Christie.
There was nothing here but an acknowledgement. I just wanted you all to have a copy of the facility plan as it was approved by the Kentucky Department of Education. You did see it before it was sent to them, but I wanted you to have a copy of it after it came back, and I included the cover letter from Greg Dunbar at District Facilities Branch at KDE with the approval of the plan and the date that it was approved. So it's just for an acknowledgement.
Does anybody have any questions or anything about that? Okay, if not, we are moving on to item number 7A.
the January organizational meeting. I know that Brenda is on. I'm not sure if Megan has been able to join yet, because I know that they're going to need to be a part of scheduling that one. Does anybody have any certain days they prefer?
Ms. Ritchie, what date are you looking at? Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. I'm not looking at any date yet. Is there a certain date? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's on. You know, I know she's driving. But Brenda, Carrie, with the fourth word.
Are we wanting to put it on a Monday night? Are you wanting to keep it on a Monday night?
You set the rest of the meeting. So, I mean, that's up to you. That we don't do anything set in stone, so you can move it to whenever you want to. But I can't do it on Tuesday. I can't do the 5th.
What about Monday, the 11th? What about the 11th? Monday, the 11th?
That works for me. It's Brenda.
Hey, Brenda.
Hey.
Paul, is that good, Roddy?
That's fine with me. I just would need probably to do some individual contacts if something comes up between the 31st and the 11th, since I wouldn't have a chairperson.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And also what you might want to think about, there would be possibly 3 meetings in a row in January.
I'd just soon not start the year off with 3 in a row.
What's the week before?
The week before is the 4th.
Yeah, I could do the 4th or the 5th. You said you couldn't do the Tuesday.
No, I can't do Tuesday. Well, let's see. I could do Wednesday or Thursday. Let's see, I can maybe possibly move stuff around to do Tuesday.
Is the 4th out then? Is that what we've said?
I thought you couldn't do the 4th.
Nope, I'm good.
Can you? Oh, I thought that's what you wanted to move it for.
I can meet on the 4th.
Oh, I can on the 4th.
I can meet on the 4th.
I can eat on the
Brenda?
4th.
Okay, let me make sure, because I don't think.
Yes.
Let's see. I know that, I think Megan, she was pretty flexible, didn't she, Brenda? In that group thing? Yes, Megan said that would be fine, so the 4th is fine for her.
She said it works.
Okay, all right. So
6:30?
January the 4th. Yes, 6:30 works.
Yes.
All right, so January 4th, 6:30, Miss Brenda, be ready.
I'm ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we are on to the consent agenda items now. So, does anybody have anything much to pull off of the consent agenda items?
I had just a couple questions on number 8 on superintendent's update.
Okay. Go ahead.
Looking over these CRF funds, Mr. Christie or Ms. Ellis, either one, I guess, on there, I've downloaded some of the stuff from the Department of Education, trying to figure out these things. And I guess rather than going through a lengthy thing, is that do we foresee anything detrimental coming because of the way these funds have been distributed? Or is it just going to be business as usual? It seemed a little bit funny the way they worded it in KDE, and I looked at what was in the update, and it looked a little bit different, but I wasn't sure on that. So I guess the only question I have, are we satisfied with the way that's going?
After the only training that I've had information in finding out how that was coming down the pike to us is basically it is like our SEEK funds. We did see a direct reduction in our SEEK for that exact amount of money that they have now given to us in a state grant. And we were told we could spend it exactly the same way that we would spend our general fund SEEK dollars. So that's basically what I've listed out of what we moved is stuff we have spent on general fund. And this is the exact information we were given and how we were supposed to transfer funds to make that grant get spent by December 30th. So I don't foresee that anything is going to change for us. It should be business as usual. It's just we had to redo kind of on the general ledger how things got reported so that we could take advantage of those CARES Act funds that are going to go away on December 30th from the state level.
I would agree with Alicia. I don't think it's going to change anything. I don't particularly like it. I don't like the idea of that because they're basically withholding SEEK funds and giving us federal money. And their reasoning for that, what we were told as superintendents, well, at the end of the year, that should mean we should have a surplus. We know in this year, there's probably not going to be a surplus anywhere. So I'm curious to see what would happen at the end of the year, because what normally happens at the end of the year, if there is a surplus, we'll generally see some additional monies for transportation. Well, I don't think that's going to happen this year because transportation costs are going to be tremendously down. So the districts aren't going to be beat down with the transportation costs like they have been in the past, because we've saved a lot on transportation already because of the COVID. We haven't expended as much as we would. I don't like the idea of it. I just see a way that they're using the federal money to get out of using the state money, and I can see that state money going away and going someplace else. That's my concern. But we've not lost money, but I see it as a loss of a potential additional monies somewhere down the road.
Yeah, I guess, when I read the part about nothing being supplemental, that kind of bothered me as far as getting that it really wasn't going to help us any at all. And I was just worried a little bit that it may have taken some away from us. And Alicia, I guess if you're still there, where the SEEK program was cut, the budget report we got now, where it's got the SEEK revenue at $16,755,000, that's going to be reduced to the $15,773,000. Is that the way you see it, or?
Yes, sir. You'll see that on the December reports that you receive in January.
All right. I just wanted to make sure on that as well. The only other question I had, you sent a letter about the vaccines out, Mr. Christie, and I was just curious of how many teachers or percentage of teachers had signed up to take that vaccine, and if that is only offered to certified staffers to everyone.
What I did was they sprung that on us pretty quick and wanted a quick turnaround from staff on who's going to take it and who isn't. And I think there's a certain percent of people that would say right now they would not take it. We're seeing that percentage of people that says that they wouldn't take it is decreasing as we progress along here. And I think as we go on, you're going to see more people probably willing to take it. So what I've done on our part, by December 30th, we will reserve enough vaccine so that everyone in the district, full and part-time, that's legally can receive the vaccine will have one reserved. Now, I didn't, because I'm afraid that if we ask now, there's going to be several that says, I don't want to take it. And maybe by the time we get this thing in February, it looks like it's going to be the 1st of February, quite possibly at best, before we see it here. And by that time, I think some of the tensions will be eased and maybe more people would be willing to take it. But if we don't sign them up for it by December the 30th, they will not have one available. So I've signed up for everybody in the district that's eligible for one to get one. Now, when we get a delivery date of that time, when they're going to say they're going to deliver the vaccine for us, that time, closer to the time that we're going to give the vaccine or that it'll be available to them, we'll survey our teachers and say, now at this point, who does not want one? And then we'll remove that many before they deliver them. So I'm kind of going at it a little different. I want to ensure that everybody's got the opportunity for it and nobody loses that opportunity.
You're on mute, Ms. Pereira.
I'm sorry, Ms. Perro, you were muted. I don't know if you were asking a question or.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was just asking. So we were okay just giving them a number. Just looking at what I saw on KDE website, it actually had an Excel spreadsheet that you had to fill out with each individual that wanted one. And also, again, I'm not sure if you answered in there, I missed it. Is it only for certified people or is it for everyone?
As far as I can see, it's for everyone. And that was another thing that wasn't real clear about what, as far as substitute teachers, part-time employees, and all those kinds of things. We're still waiting on some clarification on that too. So what I did, we're going to do the Excel spreadsheet with the name, the school name, the teacher's name, and the teacher's, all the information. We're going to do that for every employee in the district. And then as we get notice of the vaccine being sent to us, we'll survey the teachers, and if anybody wants to back out that time, they can.
And you anticipate that about February?
That's what it sounds like, that it would be that first to the middle of February before we would possibly enough vaccines. Now, if they start to up their production, or if there's a lot of that they're anticipating that's going to be taking it, or some reason it doesn't, maybe some of those guys get pushed down the line to us and we might get it a little sooner. But everything I'm hearing, it looks like it's going to be first to mid-February before we would see it at school levels. And I'm still not sure. It's probably going to be, it won't be the Pfizer, it'll be the Moderna or the other one. It's probably going to be it. It probably will not be the Pfizer. I did find out today that the Moderna is what's being delivered to this area, and that's coming into Lexington and Moorhead, I think this week, some more of it. And that's probably what we'll get. And I think it's going to be February.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have anything else they wanted to pull off, or?
Yeah, I had a question about item 29. In the payable, there's about 20 payments that are going to participants that were going on the New York trip. And I know there's some oddity with that. And I didn't know if you just wanted to discuss that just to make sure that it's all clear and, on that.
Well, before you go there, Paul, I had sorry, Scott, hold on, Scott, question. Can you clarify what that is? Because I've had people question me on what item number 29 is. So can you make that just kind of?
There's 19 of them in there, and you'll see, I'm sure that showed up on your list of those. That is a repayment for deposits that those parents and or students made for the senior trip for last year that did not take place. And we've been this long trying to get the money returned to them because the hotel, the transportation folks, all the folks that's involved in the planning of this trip, not the school people, but the company that we work with had not returned had not refunded the money. So the school had held off this long. Now, we've gotten confirmation of the refunds of the money, so we went ahead and issued the checks. The amounts that you see for those folks are the exact amount that they paid in deposits prior to the start of the trip. That's what, and that was a little different for some. Some of them were a little more aggressive in paying some up front, and that's why you see some had paid a little bit more. Some were just making the payments as they were required to make them, and that's why theirs may look to be a little less. That was the only difference. No one got anything more than what they had already given us as a deposit to go toward paying for that trip. Everything has been reimbursed to the school with the exception of the transportation piece. There's about a $2,000 on the transportation piece that we have not received the refund yet. Now, they're saying that we may likely do that. However, we're using some of the student funds that's been collected from various things, from senior groups and other things, and that some of those monies from the high school that we're using to pay that part of it. And once we get that refund, it'll go back into that account and replace it. It's all student activity funds where the money could be used for that anyway. So nobody's getting anything other than what they paid for the senior trip. And there's no other expenses for anything else included. It was just the senior trip that got canceled.
Also, to follow up on that as well, Scott, and then I'll give it back to you. There was also an email that I was asked to forward on to that, to you all as well. And I don't know if you all got, but I was at that right prior to the meeting, and I forwarded that on to each of you all as well.
Did you send one to me?
No, I think you'd already got it earlier. Mr. Boland had said he sent it out, but he didn't know if we had received it or not. He asked me to make sure the board read it. I think he sent it to, I think it was between them and us. All right, Scott, sorry I hoarded in your question there, but I had the same question, so.
No, that's it. And actually, part of the reason I wanted to bring it up was about that email, just so it was all above board and everybody knew what it was. And thank you for clarifying it was 19, not 20. I was trying to count them here on my screen. But that's all I had. I just want to make sure it was acknowledged. So everything's above board on it, and sure sounds like it is. Thank you.
Okay. Did we have anything else that needs to be pulled off? If not, would anybody like to make a motion for item 8 through 28?
I'll make that motion with the corrections that Mr. Christie mentioned earlier in the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Gordy. Sorry, Gordy. Thank you for catching that. Okay. Motion by Mr. Perdo, seconded by, who was that?
That was Scott Heisel, District 2.
Who seconded that?
I did. Scott.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay. Okay, just making sure.
Ashley, can you hear me?
Okay. Okay, I got you, Scott. All those in favor say aye. Hello? I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. I got you. Okay. Item number 29. Can you all hear me now? Okay. Authorized payment of salaries and accounts payable. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I'd like to make the motion for item 29. Pay these funds.
All right. Motion.
Yeah, I want to make it, Ashley.
I got
Scott.
you. Motion by Mr. Heisel.
Second.
I'll second.
Mr. Paradise. You were behind. She already got you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Okay. Aye.
All right, motion carries 5-0. Okay, who would like to make the motion to adjourn?
Before we do, I just want to thank you
Yeah, I
all
know you want to do
for
it.
getting to serve with you all. It's been a real honor. Appreciate your all's patience with me, and I think we've made a lot of progress in the district, and certainly a lot of that goes to you, Mr. Christie. So thank you for your leadership over the last 4 years and before then.
Thanks, Scott.
Scott, we'll miss
It's
ya.
been fun. Now, one of you two's
So I'll
got to
make
make
a
the
motion
motion
to
to
adjourn.
adjourn.
I'll make it.
All right,
Scott.
motion by Mr. Heisel, 40. Would you like a second? By
Second.
Mr. Peridot. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. Gordy and Scott, good luck. Enjoy your time. Gordy's
Thank you.
out.
See y'all later.
I've got the plaques, these nice big walnut plaques that Freeman hadn't got a hold of and sliced in veneers yet. Solid walnut plaques. How do you guys want me to get those to you? You want me to drop them off at your doors or your workplace, or you want to come to the office and pick it up?
If you just want to put it in my mailbox at the office, I'll be by sometime.
That'll work. Is that okay with you, Mr. Peridot?
He's gone. He's gone.
You didn't hear the final count on the adjourn, I don't think.